the first thing that we want to do to start getting our player accustomed to being in the level and give them the information that is necessary to complete the game, we're going to actually start with creating our UI for the player. And this is going to include a couple of things that are going to be very important for getting our guy up and running. So what we're going to start with is we're going to right click here in the hierarchy panel. We're going to go down to UI and we're going to select the canvas option all the way down at the bottom. And this canvas is what's going to hold all of our relevant UI elements. So one thing that we want to make sure we have this render mode set to screen space overlay. And we also want to go down to canvas scaler and we want to hit scale with screen size. And the reason this is we want to make sure that when we add stuff to our UI in the game window, no matter how big our monitor is, we want to make sure that everything is scaling appropriately. So we're going to set that down to scale with screen size. And then what we're also going to do is change this reference resolution to 1920 by 1080. And that's just going to match our aspect ratio, which is the height and width of our screens. Most of us are running on 16 by 9. So in your game panel, make sure that this option here is set to 16 by 9. And once we have that, we should be good to start adding our elements. So we're going to start by adding 4 empty transforms. So you're going to right click the canvas and select create empty. We're going to do that 4 times. Oops. Perfect. And we're going to rename each of these. We're going to rename the top one Ammo UI. We're going to rename the second one to Health UI. We're going to rename the third one to Points UI. And we're going to rename the fourth one to Wave UI. And you'll see why we're going to separate all these here in a second. So in the first one, what we want to do is we're going to create a UI text option. And that UI text is going to open up this text in the inspector, and we're going to see our text component down here. What we want to start with doing is actually switching to our game view again up in the top, and this will allow us, you can kind of barely see it here in the middle, this will allow us to preview our UI as we set it up here. So what we're going to start with doing is changing our color from this grayish color to a bright green. And that's just going to make it so it pops very well against our gray background. And we're going to rename this one to clip text. And that's going to represent how much ammo is currently in the gun we're using. And next we're going to change our text value here to 0. We're going to go down to this alignment option and hit the center button and the center button. That's going to center it perfectly on our in the middle of our screen here. Then we're going to go ahead and go to horizontal overflow and vertical overflow and set those both to overflow. That'll make it so if our text is big, we won't have to worry about it disappearing from our screen. And finally, we're going to set the text size to, let's say 72. Yeah, that's good. Perfect. So now that we've got our text set to 72, we're going to go back to our scene view. And this time we're going to do that trick I said earlier where we click the clip text option and we hit the F key. And that's going to bring us all the way out into the world way up here. And what you'll notice is that this big rectangle here actually represents our screen. And we want our ammo UI to be in the bottom right. So we're going to drag this guy all the way down to the bottom right. We're going to bring it a little bit to the left because next what we're going to do is click on our clip text and hit Control and D, or Command and D if you're on Mac. And what that's going to do is duplicate our text option here. And we're going to rename this one to Ammo Text. And we're also going to drag this over to the right a little bit. And what we actually want to do, and we're going to have to fix this for both texts very quickly, we actually want to go back to our alignment option here, and we're going to hit on the ammo text, make sure we have ammo text selected, we're going to hit the left align option. And that's going to align our text with the left side of this box, which is exactly what we want because this number is going to increase and we want it to fill this side of the screen. We're going to go back to our clip text and do the same thing, but this time select right alignment. And then we're going to move it over just a touch. So now you'll see this is on the right side of the box and this one's on the left side of the box. The last text we want to add, again, by clicking the clip text button and hitting the Control or Command D, it's going to duplicate. We're going to rename this one to dividing line, and then make that one word. There we go. And we're going to replace the text here with a vertical line. And you can get that by holding Shift and hitting the slash key that's above your Enter key. That's going to be important to remember because we're going to be using that symbol a lot in our code later. We also want to go to our alignment option here, and we do want this one to be center aligned, so we're going to align that with the center. And then in our scene view, we're going to drag this over to the right, so it's right in the middle of our two text objects here, and we're going to bring that up so it lines up nice and well with that. Okay, perfect. That's going to be it for our ammo UI. Next, what we're going to do is highlight all three of these by clicking the clip text, holding the Shift key, and clicking the dividing line at the bottom. So that selects all three. We're going to hit Control or Command C and select Health UI and press Control or Command V. Oh, and it pasted it down here. That's okay. As long as we still have all three selected, we're going to drag this up onto the Health UI. So as you can imagine, we're using this very similar technique here, but what we want to do is instead make our health text. So we can start by deleting the dividing line. We're not going to need that anymore. And we're going to drag the clip text and ammo text over to the left side of the screen. We're going to rename clip text to health text. And we're going to rename ammo text to health number. And then we're going to go back into health text. We're going to replace the 0 here with HP. And we're going to change it to a nice red color to represent our health. And then we're going to leave health number as a 0, but we're also going to change that over to a nice red. And we're going to try to match those as closely as possible. Cool. So we've got that done. Now we're going to do just like we did before. We're going to select the health number and the health text, press Control C or Command C, and then select Points UI. This time what we're going to do is right-click Points UI and choose Paste as Child. That'll make sure we actually get it to paste as a child of our Points UI object. We can then go back to our scene view, grab the movement gizmo, and pull it all the way up to the top left corner. And we're going to rename, or we're going to click into health text and rename that to points text. And rename health number to points number. And we're going to replace the text in health text with the, I'm sorry, not health, points value is what we want. Make sure we don't hit enter while we're in here because, like you might have noticed, it'll bump our text up, and we don't want that. And if you actually look over in our scene view, you'll see that our points text is outside of this white box. That means that if we switch over to the game view, it's not going to appear fully. So we want to drag both our text and our number over to the right so that those are all inside our white box. We're also going to select each one and color these gold because we want to represent points a little bit differently than we represent our health. Like I said, do both, turn them to a nice orangish gold color. That looks good to me. And then our final UI piece we want to add, again, by pressing Control and clicking both, and then Control or Command C, and right-click, paste as child on our Wave UI. We're going to rename this to, you might have guessed, Wave Text and Wave Number. Oops, no spaces, remember? And then we're going to drag these two, want to make sure we select both, and drag these two all the way over to our top right corner. And now we're going to replace the points word with wave, and our wave numbers can stay 0. And we're going to actually color these one red as well. And that's just to match some theming that we're going to use later, because our game certainly likes the color red. So once you've got all of your UI elements set up, go ahead and save by pressing Control or Command S, or going to File and clicking the Save button. Before we move on, we want to add one more option to our UI element here, and that's going to be what's called the crosshair. And this is going to be what indicates to our player where they're aiming at their enemies on screen. So we're going to click onto our ammo UI object here. We're going to right-click it. We're going to click UI, and then we're going to select the image option. And we're going to notice that it's centered perfectly on screen. That's exactly where we want it to be. And now we're going to go over to our image component and click this little circle icon you can see on the right side. That's going to bring up this select sprite thing. And we want to select is this circular knob icon. So we're going to click on that, and you're going to see it's going to add a big circle to the middle of our screen. We actually want to make this significantly smaller so that it's not so massive when we're trying to aim at enemies. So we're going to scale this down using the scale gizmo by pressing the R key. And we want to make sure we select this white box that's kind of hard to see with the white circle. And we're going to scale it down as much as we can. Well, not as much as we can, probably to something like this, so it's maybe not visible behind the box. It depends on how far you are, but we can keep switching back to our game view, and that's actually still a little big, so we're going to keep scaling it down, and you can drag to the left to scale it down. I'll do a little bit smaller. I like a small crosshair. There we go, that looks good. And then finally what we want to do is go back to our image component, and we're going to change this to red. And that's just so we make sure that it sticks out from our background. We're also going to go up to the image that we just made and rename that to crosshair. And once you've got that renamed, you can go ahead and save the scene again by Control S or going through the file menu.